Sorry, I don't speak minimum wage.
You know, in all my years on this bench, and I've been sitting in this chair for 4 decades now, I've learned that the measure of a person's character isn't found in their bank account. It isn't found in the car they drive, the neighborhood they live in, or the last name they inherit. No, the measure of a person's character is revealed in how they treat others when they think there are no consequences, how they speak to the person serving them coffee, how they respond when they're told no for the very first time in their privileged life. What I witnessed in this courtroom 3 days ago wasn't just disrespectful, it was a complete and utter collapse of human decency. I've presided over thousands of cases, thousands. I've seen people at their absolute worst, desperate, angry, broken. I've seen drug addicts shaken withdrawal. I've seen fathers cry because they can't pay child support. I've seen teenagers who made one terrible mistake that changed their lives forever. And in almost every single case, even when people are facing serious consequences, a understanding that this courtroom represents something bigger than all of us. It represents the idea that in America, no matter who you are, you answer to the same laws as everyone else. Rich or poor, black or white, connected or alone. That's the promise. That's what I've dedicated my entire life to protecting. But then there are cases like this one, cases that make me question whether we're teaching our children anything of value anymore. Cases that make me wonder if we've created a generation so insulated by wealth, so protected from reality, so convinced of their own superiority that they genuinely believe the rules don't apply to them. So let me tell you about the defendant standing before me today. Her name is Madison Alexandra Rothschild, 23 years old, residing at 47 Belvedere Estates, which, for those of you who don't know, is the most expensive gated community in this entire state. Single-family homes there start at $8 million. Her father is Jonathan Rothschild. You've seen his buildings, Rothschild Tower downtown, the Rothschild shopping complex. Half the luxury condominiums on the waterfront bear his name. The man is worth an estimated $2.3 billion, with a B. Madison attended Ashford Preparatory Academy, $35,000 a year for high school. Then she went to Princeton. Her father donated a new library there, coincidentally, right before her acceptance letter arrived. She graduated with a degree in art history, which, as far as I can tell, has consisted of traveling to Europe 4 times a year and posting pictures on social media. She doesn't work. She's never worked. She has no job, no responsibilities, no understanding whatsoever of what it means to earn something through actual effort. And I can see her standing there right now, at that defense table. She's not looking at me. French manicure probably cost more than some people make in a day. She's wearing a Chanel suit. I know because my wife watches those fashion shows. Probably $15,000. Hermes bag on the table next to her. Cartier bracelet catching the light. And she's got this expression on her face. Not remorse, not concern, not even attention. Just this look of supreme boredom, like she's waiting in line at the DMV and can't understand why this is taking so long. Her lawyer, Mr. Hendricks, and he's a good lawyer, one of the most expensive in the state at $750 an hour, keeps whispering to her, probably telling her to look contrite, to pay attention, to show some respect. But she just keeps checking her phone under the table, thinking I can't see her, thinking the rules about electronic devices in my courtroom don't apply to her either. Now let me read you the police report because this is where it gets interesting. On November 8th of this year, at approximately 9:47 p.m., Officer Michael Chen, badge number 2847, was conducting routine traffic enforcement on Highland Avenue, right near the intersection of Highland and Morrison. This is a residential area, folks. Speed limit is 25 miles per hour. There are families there, children, people walking their dogs. It's not a highway. It's not a racetrack. It's a neighborhood where people live. Officer Chen observed a white Lamborghini Huracan Evo, that's a $400,000 vehicle, traveling at what he estimated to be extremely high speed. He activated his radar gun and clocked the vehicle at 73 miles per hour, 73 in a 25 zone. That's not speeding, ladies and gentlemen. That's reckless endangerment. That's a 48 mile per hour difference. That's nearly 3 times the legal limit. Officer Chen immediately activated his lights and siren. The Lamborghini didn't stop. It continued for another 3/4 of a mile, weaving between cars, running a stop sign at Morrison and Oak, that's a second violation, before finally pulling into the parking lot of a luxury boutique called Belle Couture. And even then, the car didn't just pull over. According to the report, the defendant parked across two handicapped spaces. Officer Chen approached the vehicle. He noted in his report that the defendant had her window up, and when he asked her to lower it, she made him wait 45 seconds while she finished typing something on her phone. 45 seconds. This officer has his lights flashing. He's just pursued a vehicle that was endangering lives, and she makes him stand there and wait while she finishes her text message. When she finally lowered the window, Officer Chen immediately smelled what he described as a strong odor of alcohol. He asked for her license and registration. And this is where it starts to go really wrong. The defendant, Miss Rothschild, looked at Officer Chen and said, and I'm reading directly from his report now, "Do you have any idea who my father is?" Officer Chen, to his credit, remained professional. He said, "Ma'am, I need to see your license and registration." She responded, "I'm friends with the chief of police. I have his personal cell phone number. You're making a huge mistake right now." Now, Officer Chen is a 15-year veteran. He's been threatened before. He's been cursed at, spit on, had people try to bribe him. He asked again for her license and registration. The defendant finally reached into her purse, that Hermes bag, probably $30,000, and threw her license at him. Literally threw it. It hit him in the chest and fell to the ground. At this point, Officer Chen asked the defendant to step out of the vehicle so he could conduct a field sobriety test. And what did Miss Rothschild do? She laughed. She actually laughed. She said, according to the report, "I'm not doing your stupid tests. Just write whatever ticket you're going to write so I can leave. I have dinner reservations." Officer Chen explained that based on the odor of alcohol and her behavior, he was required to conduct a sobriety test. He asked her again to step out of the vehicle. She refused. He asked a third time. She said, "Touch me and I'll have you fired by tomorrow morning." Now, Officer Chen called for backup. Within 6 minutes, Sergeant Rodriguez, badge number 1523, arrived on scene. Together, they again asked the defendant to exit the vehicle. At this point, she became what they described as belligerent and verbally abusive. She started yelling that they were harassing her because she was rich and successful. This young woman who has never worked a day in her life, who is living off her father's money, called herself successful. They had to forcibly remove her from the vehicle. She resisted. She kicked at Officer Chen, struck Sergeant Rodriguez in the shoulder with her fist. That's assault on a police officer. That's a felony. And when they finally got her out of the car and attempted to administer a breathalyzer test, she spit at Officer Chen. The saliva struck him on his left cheek, according to the report. That's another count of assault on an officer. She refused the breathalyzer. Under implied consent law in this state, refusal to submit to a chemical test results in an automatic 1-year license suspension. But more importantly, it gives us evidence of consciousness of guilt. If you weren't drunk, why wouldn't you take the test? Why would you assault 2 police officers rather than simply prove your innocence? They arrested her, they read her rights, and as they were placing her in the back of the patrol car, she was screaming, and I'm going to clean up the language here, she was screaming that her father would destroy their careers, that they were nobody, that they'd be working security at shopping malls by the end of the month. At the station, she refused to cooperate with booking. She refused to answer questions. She demanded her lawyer, which is her right, but she did it by yelling that she wouldn't speak to minimum wage servants. Those were her words. Minimum wage servants, about police officers who put their lives on the line every single day. She was charged with reckless driving, DUI, refusal to submit to testing, 2 counts of assault on a police officer, resisting arrest, and illegal parking in a handicapped zone. Her father posted her bail, $150,000 in cash within 2 hours, and here's where it gets worse. 3 days after her arrest, while she was out on bail, awaiting her court date, she posted on her Instagram account. She has 430,000 followers, apparently. She posted a photo of herself at some exclusive restaurant, holding up a glass of champagne, and the caption read, "Not even close to my first DUI, and definitely won't be my last. When you have the right last name, rules are just suggestions." When you have the right last name, rules are just suggestions. She posted this publicly. She bragged about it. She admitted to multiple DUIs that we didn't even know about. Her lawyer must have been beside himself. You never admit guilt publicly. You never mock the justice system publicly. But she was so confident, so absolutely certain that nothing would happen to her that she didn't even care. Thousands of comments. Most people were outraged, but some of her followers, and this is what really disturbed me, some of them were commenting things like queen behavior and I wish I had your life, and that's what money gets you. Like this was something to admire. Like breaking the law and assaulting police officers was aspirational content. The district attorney's office saw the post. They immediately moved to revoke her bail. She was brought back into custody, and that's when she was scheduled to appear before me. Her father hired 3 more lawyers. They filed motions to dismiss, motions to suppress evidence, motions to move the trial to another jurisdiction, every legal trick in the book. And I denied every single one because the evidence was overwhelming and the law was clear. So we scheduled a hearing. And this is where we get to the first time she appeared in my courtroom. That was 3 days ago. She walked in dressed like she was going to a country club. Sundress, designer sunglasses on her head. No sign whatsoever that she understood the gravity of the situation. Her legal team, 4 lawyers now, surrounded her like a protective barrier. They asked for immediate bail reinstatement. I said no, not after that Instagram post. She was a flight risk, clearly had no respect for the conditions of her release, and posed a danger to the community. Her lead attorney, Mr. Hendricks, stood up and gave this impassioned speech about how Miss Rothschild was a pillar of the community, how she did charity work, which turned out to be attending charity galas, not actually doing any work, how she had no prior record, which was technically true because her father had apparently made previous incidents disappear. He asked for mercy. He asked for understanding. He argued that the Instagram post was taken out of context, which is impossible when you literally write, "Not my first DUI and won't be my last." I listened to all of it. I always listen. That's my job. But when he was done, I looked at Miss Rothschild and I asked her directly, "Do you have anything to say? Do you understand why you're here? Do you understand that 2 police officers were just doing their jobs and you assaulted them?" And you know what she did? She rolled her eyes. She actually rolled her eyes at me. Then she looked at her lawyer and said, loud enough for everyone in the courtroom to hear, "Is this going to take much longer? I have plans tonight." I told her that, yes, this was going to take a while because we were going to address every single charge. I told her that this was serious, that people could have died because of her reckless driving, that assaulting police officers is a felony, that she needed to start taking this seriously. And that's when she said it. She looked directly at me, first time she'd actually made eye contact, and she said, "Why would I take you seriously?" She paused, looked me up and down with this expression of complete contempt, and then she said the words that I will never forget. "Sorry, I don't speak minimum wage. Sorry, I don't speak minimum wage." The courtroom went silent, absolutely silent. Her own lawyers looked like they wanted to crawl under the table. The bailiff actually took a step forward thinking there might be trouble. And I just sat there looking at this young woman, this person who had been given every advantage in life, who had never known hunger or struggle or fear, who had never earned a single thing through her own merit. And I realized that I was looking at the absolute worst of what wealth without character produces. And then, and I want you to understand this part clearly, she wasn't done. She turned to her father, who was sitting in the gallery, and she laughed. She actually laughed. Then she turned back to me and she said, "My father makes more in an hour than you make in a year. You want to lecture me about respect? You're wearing a robe from a costume shop. I'm wearing a bracelet that costs more than your car. So no, I don't speak minimum wage, and I'm not going to pretend like we're on the same level." And then, this is the part that even I couldn't quite believe, she reached into her purse, pulled out a tissue, and she spit into it. Then she dropped it on the floor of my courtroom. She spit into a tissue and dropped it on the floor of my courtroom to show her contempt. I have been disrespected before. I've had people curse at me. I've had people threaten me. I've had people cry, plead, beg, and argue. But in 40 years, I have never, not once, had someone stand in front of me and express such complete and utter contempt, not just for me, but for the entire concept of justice itself. Her lawyers were trying to apologize. Mr. Hendricks was on his feet saying she didn't mean it. She was under stress. She wasn't thinking clearly. But I held up my hand and I said, "Counselor, sit down. Your client has said quite enough." I looked at Miss Rothschild and I said, "Young lady, you think that money insulates you from consequences. You think that your father's wealth makes you untouchable. You think that the rules that govern everyone else don't apply to you. And clearly, up until this moment, you've been right. You've gotten away with everything. You've had your father's money, and lawyers clean up every mess you've made. But let me tell you something that no one in your entire privileged life has apparently had the courage to tell you. Money doesn't make you better than other people. It just makes you wealthier. And wealth without character is not success. It's just corruption wearing expensive clothes." She tried to interrupt me. She actually tried to talk over me, but I raised my voice and I said, "You will be silent. You've had your say. Now you're going to listen." I told her that Officer Chen, the man she assaulted, the man she called minimum wage, makes $47,000 a year. He has 2 children. He coaches Little League on weekends. He's been decorated 3 times for bravery. Once for pulling a family out of a burning car, once for talking down a suicidal veteran, once for disarming an armed robbery suspect without firing a shot. He puts on that uniform every morning knowing he might not come home. And she spit on him because he dared to enforce the law. I told her that Sergeant Rodriguez, the other officer she assaulted, is a single mother. She works overtime to support her daughter. She volunteers at a homeless shelter. She's working on her master's degree in criminal justice, taking night classes after 12-hour shifts. And she called her a minimum wage servant. I told her that I grew up in a neighborhood where nobody had money. My father worked in a factory for 30 years. My mother cleaned houses. I put myself through college working construction in the summers and bussing tables at night. I went to law school on loans that took me 15 years to pay off. I became a lawyer, then a prosecutor, then a judge, not because someone handed it to me, but because I worked for it every single day. And she, who had never earned anything, never sacrificed anything, never worked for anything, she thought she could look down on me. And then I told her something else. I told her that money, real money, the kind her father has, comes with responsibility. The Rockefellers built libraries and universities. Andrew Carnegie funded thousands of public libraries across America. Bill Gates is trying to eradicate diseases. When you have that much wealth, you have an obligation to use it to improve society, not to raise children who think other human beings are beneath them. Her father was still sitting in the gallery, and I addressed him directly. I said, "Mr. Rothschild, I don't know you personally, but I know of you. You've built an empire. You've created jobs. You've been successful by any measure. But, sir, with all due respect, you have failed as a father because you have raised a daughter who thinks that money makes her superior to other people. You have raised a daughter who assaults police officers and laughs about it. You have raised a daughter who has no empathy, no humility, no understanding whatsoever of what it means to be a decent human being. And that, sir, is a failure that all your billions cannot fix." He looked like he wanted to respond, but I wasn't done. I turned back to Miss Rothschild and I said, "You posted on Instagram that this wouldn't be your last DUI. You bragged about having multiple DUIs. Well, let me tell you what's going to happen now. I'm going to make sure this is your last one for a very long time." And then I handed down my sentence. And I want to explain each part of it carefully because I want you to understand that this isn't about revenge. This isn't about me being offended. This is about justice. This is about making sure that someone who has shown absolutely no regard for the law, for public safety, or for basic human decency, on the charge of reckless driving, I found her guilty and sentenced her to 30 days in county jail. Not suspended, not probation, actual jail time. 30 days where she'll wear the same jumpsuit as everyone else, eat the same food as everyone else, and follow the same rules as everyone else. On the DUI charge, I found her guilty and sentenced her to 90 days in county jail to run consecutively with the reckless driving sentence. That's 120 days total, 4 months. And I ordered that she complete a 6-month alcohol treatment program to begin immediately upon her release. Not some luxury rehab facility in Malibu, a county-run program. On the charge of refusing to submit to chemical testing, I imposed the mandatory 1-year license suspension, plus an additional 2 years. Her license is suspended for 3 years total. She won't be driving that Lamborghini or any other car until she's 26 years old. On the 2 counts of assault on a police officer, these are felonies. Each carries a maximum sentence of 5 years. I sentenced her to 2 years on each count to run concurrently with each other but consecutively to everything else. That means after she serves the 120 days, she'll serve an additional 2 years. That's 2 years and 4 months total. On the charge of resisting arrest, I sentenced her to 6 months, concurrent with the other sentences. And on the illegal parking violation, I fined her the maximum, $500, which I know is nothing to her, but it's the principle. But I wasn't done. Because this young woman had shown such complete disrespect for this court, I found her in contempt, not just for the minimum wage comment, though that alone would have been sufficient, but for the entire pattern of behavior, the eye rolling, the phone checking, the spitting, the laughing. I sentenced her to an additional 30 days for contempt of court. So let me add that up for you. 120 days for the traffic offenses, plus 2 years for the assault charges, plus 30 days for contempt. That's 2 years, 5 months total. She'll be 26 years old when she gets out, nearly 3 years of her life. I also imposed fines. $25,000 for the DUI, $10,000 for each assault charge, $5,000 for reckless driving. That's $50,000 in fines, which will go to victim support services and law enforcement training programs. And here's the part that I think really got through to her. Finally, I ordered that upon her release, she must complete 1,000 hours of community service. Not the kind of community service where you show up to a charity gala and take pictures. Real community service. I ordered that she work at a homeless shelter, serving meals and cleaning facilities. I ordered that she work with a program that helps families of police officers killed in the line of duty. I ordered that she volunteer with Mothers Against Drunk Driving, where she'll have to hear the stories of families whose loved ones were killed by drunk drivers. And I ordered that every single Instagram post, every social media post she makes for the next 5 years must be approved by her probation officer. Because she wanted to use social media to mock the justice system, now she'll have to use it to show accountability. When I finished reading the sentence, the courtroom was still silent. Her lawyers looked stunned. Her father had his head in his hands, and Miss Rothschild, for the first time since this whole ordeal began, looked scared. Not angry, not entitled, scared. Because I think it finally dawned on her that this was real, that she was actually going to jail, that her father's money couldn't make this go away. She tried to speak. She said, "Your Honor, But I cut her off. I said, "No. You had your chance to speak. You used it to insult me and every person in this courtroom who works for a living. You don't get another chance." The bailiff took her into custody right there. She started crying, finally. She looked at her father and said, "Daddy, do something." But there was nothing he could do, nothing anyone could do. The sentence was pronounced. She was going to jail. As they led her out of the courtroom in handcuffs, I sat back in my chair and I thought about what I'd just done. Some people might say I was too harsh. Some people might say that 2.5 years is excessive for a first-time offender. But those people didn't see what I saw. They didn't hear what I heard. They didn't witness a young woman who was so poisoned by privilege that she genuinely believed other human beings were beneath her. This sentence isn't just about punishing her, it's about protecting society. Because if I had given her probation, if I had suspended the sentence, if I had let her father's lawyers negotiate this down to a fine and community service, what message would that send? It would send the message that she was right, that money does put you above the law, that you can assault police officers and mock the courts and face no real consequences as long as your father can write a check. And you know what? I've seen what happens when we send that message. I've seen wealthy defendants get slap-on-the-wrist sentences, walk out of court laughing, and commit the same crimes again. I've seen them hurt people, kill people, destroy families, and never face real accountability. And every time that happens, every time we create a two-tiered justice system, one for the rich and one for everyone else, we undermine the very foundation of our democracy. Because the promise of America, the promise that we're supposed to believe in, is that we're all equal under the law. It doesn't matter if you're a billionaire or a busboy. It doesn't matter if you live in a mansion or a homeless shelter. When you break the law, when you hurt people, when you show contempt for the basic rules that hold our society together, you face consequences, the same consequences. That's the promise. And I'm going to tell you something else. This case has gotten attention. It's been in the news. People are talking about it, and I've received messages, hundreds of them, from people thanking me, working people, police officers, teachers, nurses, people who get up every day and do their jobs and follow the rules and try to raise their children right. They're tired of watching wealthy people break the law and get away with it. They're tired of being talked down to by people who think money makes them superior. They're tired of feeling like the system is rigged against them. And you know what? They're right to be tired, because for too long we have created a system where wealth buys you a different kind of justice, where if you can afford a team of lawyers, you can delay, you can negotiate, you can make problems disappear, where a poor kid with a public defender gets years in prison for the same crime that a rich kid with a private attorney walks away from with probation. That's not justice, that's corruption, and I will not be part of it, not in my courtroom, not on my watch. So to every parent out there listening to this, let me say something to you. Teach your children humility, teach them empathy, teach them that every person they meet, the janitor, the cashier, the police officer, the judge, is a human being deserving of respect. Teach them that money is a tool, not a measure of their worth. Teach them that true success isn't about what you have, it's about what you do with what you have. Teach them to leave the world better than they found it. Because if you don't teach them these things, if you raise them to believe they're superior because of their bank account, if you shield them from every consequence and clean up every mess they make, you're not protecting them. You're destroying them. You're creating human beings who will never know real accomplishment because they've never had to work for anything, who will never know real relationships because they don't see other people as equals, who will never know real happiness because their entire sense of self-worth is built on something as hollow and meaningless as money. Miss Madison Rothschild is 23 years old. She has her whole life ahead of her. And maybe these 2.5 years will teach her something that all her father's billions never could. Maybe she'll learn what it means to be humble. Maybe she'll learn what it means to work for something. Maybe she'll learn that every person she meets has value regardless of what they earn or where they come from. Or maybe she won't. Maybe she'll serve her time and get out and go right back to the same entitled, contemptuous behavior. But at least for 2.5 years, the people of this community will be safe from her reckless driving. The police officers of this city won't have to worry about being assaulted by her. And everyone who heard what happened in this courtroom will know that there are still places where money doesn't buy you a pass. I want to close with this thought, and I want you to really hear this. Justice isn't about revenge. It's not about making people suffer for the sake of suffering. Justice is about balance. It's about taking someone who has caused harm and holding them accountable in proportion to that harm. It's about protecting society, and it's about giving people a chance, sometimes their last chance, to become better than they are. That's what I tried to do here today. Miss Rothschild caused real harm. She endangered lives with her reckless driving. She assaulted 2 police officers who were just doing their jobs. She showed absolute contempt for the law and for the people who enforce it, and she needed to face real consequences for those actions. Consequences that matched the severity of what she did. But I also gave her something else. I gave her 2.5 years to think, to reflect, to maybe, just maybe, realize that the way she's been living her life is wrong. I gave her community service assignments that will force her to see people she's never had to see before. People who are struggling, people who are hurting, people who work hard and get no recognition and do it anyway because it's the right thing to do. I gave her a chance to become someone different, someone better. Whether she takes that chance is up to her. But I want every young person out there, especially those who come from wealth, to understand this. Your privilege is not a crown, it's a responsibility. You didn't earn your father's money, you didn't build that empire, you were born into it, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But with that privilege comes an obligation to use it well, to treat people with dignity, to understand that your good fortune is exactly that, fortune, not merit. And to everyone else, to all the hardworking people out there who play by the rules and do the right thing even when it's hard, I want you to know this. I see you. The law sees you. And in this courtroom, at least, you matter just as much as anyone else. Your dignity matters. Your safety matters. Your right to be treated with respect matters. And I will do everything in my power to protect those things. This court is adjourned.